Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In a small, unassuming town nestled between rolling hills and dense woods, the life of its residents moved at a gentle pace. Known for its picturesque landscapes and tight-knit community, Willow Creek seemed to be a place where secrets were as rare as thunderous storms on a summer's day. But beneath the surface of this quaint town, an insidious darkness lurked, waiting for the perfect moment to break through. It was an early autumn morning, the kind where a crisp chill nipped at the air, and the leaves began their gradual metamorphosis into shades of amber and crimson. The scent of damp earth mingled with a morning fog that hung close to the ground, washing the sleepy streets with an eerie sense of intrigue. As dawn broke, the peaceful facade of Willow Creek stood in stark contrast to the events about to unfold. At the center of this seemingly idyllic town lay Pine Hill Park, a favorite spot for early joggers and dog walkers. Yet on this particular morning, the park remained shrouded in silence, a calm before the storm that would shatter the tranquility. When Detective Clara Hargrove received the call, she was in the middle of her daily routine, a cup of coffee in hand, as she dissected her latest case. With a history of tackling the town's toughest investigations, she had built a reputation for no-nonsense tenacity. As she hurried toward the park, she had no inkling that she was about to plunge into a case that would test her limits and threaten to uncover the town's darkest secrets. The victim. By the time Detective Clara Hargrove arrived at Pine Hill Park, a small crowd had begun to gather at the scene. The heaviness of the air felt palpable, charged with a collective anxiety that spread through the onlookers. Clara pushed through the cluster of curious faces, her focus drawn to the unmistakable yellow tape fluttering in the breeze. The park, ordinarily vibrant with laughter and life, now felt like a graveyard of hope. At the heart of the disturbance was a small clearing, a place where sunbeams filtered down through the canopy of trees, creating a serene backdrop that starkly contrasted the grim priority of the day. Beneath the outstretched limbs of an ancient oak, just a few feet away from the twisting path, lay the body of a young woman. Clara knelt down, her seasoned instincts already on high alert. Sarah Mitchell, only 25, had been a beloved figure in Willow Creek, known for her vibrant smile and generous spirit. A art teacher, she dedicated herself to nurturing creativity in her students. As Clara examined the scene, she noted the signs of struggle evident in the displaced leaves and twigs scattered nearby, an unsettling reminder that this peaceful atmosphere could be disrupted in an instant. Emotions surged around her. Whispers of disbelief traveled through the crowd. Victims were not meant to belong to this place. Not to Sarah, whose laughter still echoed brightly in the minds of those who knew her. The question loomed large. How could someone commit such a heinous act in a community that prided itself on kindness? As Clara began piecing together the fragments of Sarah's last moments, she felt the weight of the town's grief and anger settle heavily on her shoulders. The investigation was not merely about uncovering facts, it was about finding justice for a life stolen too soon. The crime scene. The whir of forensic equipment set against the backdrop of hushed conversations created an unsettling symphony. Clara stood, eyes narrowed, as she surveyed the crime scene, now transformed under the bright lights of the investigation team. The once harmonious surroundings of Pine Hill Park had now become a meticulous laboratory. swarming with agents cataloging evidence and taking swabs from the ground. A forensic technician knelt beside Sarah's body, carefully documenting various aspects of the scene. Clara's gaze flicked to the victim. Carefully laid over Sarah's legs was an artist's scarf, vibrant against her pale skin, an item that seemed out of place, almost a mocking reminder of the life cut short. Clara's intuition told her that the scarf might lead them somewhere. Every detail mattered. The detective moved back to the path where Sarah had last walked. Twigs, still bent from the disturbance, betrayed signs of struggle. Footprints in the damp earth. An indistinct mark, perhaps the brush of a body dragged or pushed. Clara leaned down, running her fingers over the disrupt. Each piece of evidence whispered a story of desperation and fear, and Clara sought the narrative hidden within the chaos. Nearby, personal items strewn across the ground suggested Sarah's hurried unraveling during the confrontation. A scattered phone, a frayed notebook filled with her art ideas, pages turned as if she had taken them out to show someone. These possessions were echoes of the life she led, and Clara felt them tugging at the fabric of her heart. As she jotted notes, her thoughts spiraled. This was not just a homicide. It was a message. Someone had wanted to silence Sarah, but it would take much more than violence to erase her memory. Clara vowed to unearth the truth, no matter the toll it would take on her. The early investigation. Following the initial shock of discovery, the investigation began to gain momentum. Chief among Clara's priorities was to gather any background information on Sarah Mitchell. Who had she been with last? Had she expressed fear or animosity toward anyone? Nora knew that the answers to these questions would shape the entire course of the inquiry. Back at the precinct, the office buzzed with activity, the air thick with anticipation. Clara gathered her team around a large whiteboard plastered with photographs of Sarah, notes about her life, and details from the crime scene. A small group of officers dove into social media accounts and recent public interactions, while Clara coordinated interviews with those who knew the artist best. Her first stop was the local cafe Cozy Corner, a hub of social interaction where community members shared stories over steaming mugs. Clara approached the barista, a nervous young woman named Alice, who had spent time with Sarah almost daily. Alice, Clara began gently, can you tell me about Sarah? Anyone she might have seemed worried about in the days leading up to, well, you know. Alice's eyes clouded with grief. She was excited about her upcoming art show. But she did mention a run-in with someone named Mason, I think. He used to be a student of hers. She said he was upset with her for giving someone else encouragement. The name echoed in Clara's mind, a potential lead weaving itself into the fabric of the case. Next, Clara made her way to the art studio where Sarah taught. The familiar scent of paint and varnish hung in the air. The scattered paints and unfinished canvases seemed to mourn the absence of their creator. Clara spoke with Sarah's closest friends and colleagues, piecing together a scene that painted a vivid picture of the victim's life via life marred, it seemed, by more than just artistic ambition. Each interview offered whispers of tension and jealousy, creating a risky web that Clara knew was merely a glimpse into a world fraught with hidden complexities. As she collected these fragments, the investigation morphed from a simple inquiry into a labyrinthine mystery, and Clara was keenly aware that she stood at its very threshold. The dead ends. Weeks passed, and what initially felt like a straightforward investigation transformed into a maze of uncertainties. Clara felt the heavy cloak of frustration settle over her as she poured through leads that led nowhere. Each thread she tugged unraveled into more complex yet conflicting alibis, disappearing witnesses, and haunting whispers of Sarah's recent struggles. The name Mason resurfaced multiple times, yet he proved elusive. Clara reached out to former classmates and colleagues, hoping for a clue, but responses felt scripted and rehearsed. He's just been distant. Didn't seem like himself, they would say, eyes darting away from the tension that hung unspoken in the air. Every trail led to contradictory accounts, each dead end amplifying the frustration. On one particularly dreary afternoon, the rain pattered relentlessly against the precinct windows as Clara reviewed her notes. Scattered photographs of Sarah's life adorned her desk, memories frozen in timely awful laughter, vibrant colors and joy. Yet, under it all lay a persistent current of dread. A flicker of hope arrived when a call came in from a local bar. An anonymous tip suggested Mason had been spotted conversing with a woman, uneasily eyeing the door as if watching for some. Clara arranged for officers to stake out the place, hoping to catch him in conversation with someone who could shed light on his actions. Yet, those hopes quickly faded. Days turned into silence, and the few witnesses questioned could only offer vague descriptions and indistinct recollections. All Clara received were dead ends disguised as Late's potential suspects, disappearing into nothingness. As she looked around the precinct, the weight of each unresolved question pressed heavily against her resolve. Desperation echoed through her mind, urging her to redefine the path of the investigation. Something vital still lingered in Willow Creek shadows, drawing her deeper into the vortex of its unspoken truths. Clara knew she had to dig deeper, but the further she got, the more tangled the web became, and the heavier the burden pressed against her heart. A break in the case. Just as Clara's frustration threatened to overcome her determination, an unexpected twist emerged from the shadows of uncertainty. It was an unremarkable Thursday when a phone call interrupted the silence in the precinct. The voice on the other end belonged to a local teenager named Jake, known for his tendency to find trouble where it thrived. However, Jake's urgency intrigued Clara. Had claimed to have seen something on the night of Sarah's murder. Clara wasted no time, driving over to the neighborhood where Jake lived. The streets were familiar yet dim in the late afternoon light, shadows creeping along the sagging porches of old homes. When she arrived, she found Jake perched on a porch, tapping nervously at his phone, while glancing around as if wary of what might emerge from the corners of his mind. "Clara, I didn't think you'd actually come," he stammered, eyes wide, appearing unsettled. "What did you see, Jake?" Clara pressed, hoping for the breakthrough they so desperately needed. Jake took a deep breath, fidgeting as he recounted the previous night's events. "I was just hanging out near the park when I saw Sarah talking to a guy. I didn't think much of it at first, but then it got heated. They were arguing." He hesitated, and Clara could see the fear plastered on his face as he realized the weight of the information he was revealing. "Did you see who he was?" Clara urged, heart racing at the possibility. "Yeah," Jake whispered. "It was Mason. I recognized him from school, but then they vanished into the trees. I heard shouting, but I didn't want to get involved, you know. The revelation struck into Clara's mind like lightning. This was a significant lead. A confrontation between Sarah and Masona, a more precarious connection than anyone had previously considered. As she left Jake's porch, excitement coursed through her blood. For the first time, tangible threads knit together, leading Clara back toward the very person she'd hoped to confront. The pieces began to align amid the chaos, and Clara felt rejuvenated, ready to unravel the web that had ensnared the town in fear. The suspect. Clara sat at her desk, her notes spread like a jigsaw puzzle awaiting completion. The breakthrough from Jake had reignited a spark of hope within her, morphing into a focused determination to track down Mason. With the gravity of newfound evidence, Clara scheduled a meeting with his last known mentor from the art programma figure, who might illuminate the troubled student's path. As she entered the small community gallery where Mason had exhibited his work, Clara was met with vibrant colors splashed across canvases. The contrast served as a reminder of the darkness that had seeped into the town. She found Mason's former instructor, an older woman with streaks of gray hair framing a kind yet weary face. "Mr. Jenks, I need to ask you about Mason," Clara said, carefully noting the woman's demeanor. He was seen arguing with Sarah Mitchell right before her death. A flicker of recognition washed over the instructor's features, framed by an expression of concern. Mason, he was very talented, but he struggled. He had a tough time dealing with criticism. Her eyes softened at the memory. "I noticed he'd been acting unusually distant lately. It worried me, but I thought it was just a phase." Clara leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "Did he ever express specific grievances about Sarah? Any feelings of resentment?" "Mason idolized her at first," she replied, her voice wavering slightly. "But then he felt overshadowed when she encouraged others. I witnessed him become increasingly frustrated, almost obsessed with her. There were times it bordered on unhealthy." As the words fell from the mentor's lips, the dots began to connect in Clara's mind. Here was a young man captivated by talent, yet marred by his own insecurities and jealousy. It became evident that Mason was not merely an aggrieved student, but a potential suspect tangled in a web of admiration turned hostility. With renewed urgency, Clara now needed to locate Mason, intent on uncovering the truth hidden beneath layers of youthful passion and pain. She felt an unsettling mix of unease and determination. The path was fraught with danger, but she had taken one step closer to confronting the storm that threatened to consume them all. The trial. The atmosphere in the courthouse was heavy with expectation as Clara Hargrove stepped into the packed courtroom. The trial of Mason Jackson had become an event that rippled through Willow Creek, drawing residents eager to witness justice for Sarah Mitchell. Each face held a mixture of curiosity, anger, and grief, as the haunting reality of Sarah's death remained fresh in the community's memory. Clara took her seat, her heart thumping steadily in her chest. As the judge entered and silence fell over the room, the prosecution presented a strong case, laying bare Mason's history, a troubled student whose talents had been eclipsed by his obsession and anger towards Sarah. The argument depicted their interaction on that fateful night, showcasing evidence from Jake's testimony and findings from the crime scene to illustrate Mason's potential motive. As the defense rose, Clara felt a chill run down her spine. They painted Mason as a misunderstood youth, claiming Sarah's encouragement had driven him into a whirlwind of anxiety. They spoke of his past hardships, But Clara saw through the veil of sympathy to the darkness beneath, a toxic brew of envy and resentment. Witness after witness took the stand, each recounting their interactions with Sarah and Mason. Mason's eyes remained downcast, an unsettling contrast to the bravado he once exhibited. Clara noted how the charges affected him. It was as if he'd been stripped of his artistic facade, revealing the raw vulnerability of a boy consumed by his failures. As the trial neared its conclusion, Clara held her breath, yearning for justice, not just for Sarah, but for the town that had borne the weight of such a tragedy. The jurors were deliberating, and in the thick tension, the question floated through the air: had they seen enough to condemn or acquit? When the verdict was finally read, Clara felt the room hold its collective breath. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of second-degree murder." A wave of emotion washed over the courtroom. Relief mingled with sorrow. Justice had been served, but it was a bittersweet victory. Clara felt the gravity of the moment settle in her bones. A life had been lost, irrevocably changed, a community left to pick up the pieces. Amidst the chaos of murmurs and shuffling feet, she left the courtroom with a sense of closure for Sarah. But the scars of this case would linger on, binding the town together in knowledge of what had transpired. The aftermath. In the weeks following the trial, Willow Creek began to confront the deep scars left by Sarah's murder and the revelation of Mason's guilt. The once bustling streets, often filled with laughter and camaraderie, now carried an air of somber resignation. As Clara Hargrove walked through the town, she witnessed families huddled together, voices hushed, their eyes reflecting a shared grief that had etched itself into the very fabric of their community. A memorial was held in Pine Hill Park, where Sarah had once walked with enthusiasm, her laughter ringing like a bell in the air. Community members gathered around the oak tree that had borne witness to her last moment. Candles flickered in soft tribute, illuminating faces marked by sorrow, yet shining with determination. Clara stood among them, her heart heavy, not only for Sarah, but for a town struggling to reclaim its peace. In the days that followed, support groups formed, offering solace to those affected by violence and loss. The gallery where Mason had exhibited his work opened its doors to artists aiming to express their pain through creation, rather than destruction. Clara attended one session, surrounded by familiar faces, students she had known, parents of victims and survivors, each sharing their stories of heartache transformed into art. The shared struggle sparked a sense of resilience. While mourning Sarah's life, the town began to embody her spirit. Yet some shadows remained. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that though justice had been served, justice alone was no remedy for sorrow. She continued to receive letters and messages from the townsfolk, some angry, others supportive, all grappling with the complexities of a crime that had shattered their sense of safety. As autumn seeped into winter, Clara found solace in her work, channeling her energy into understanding the larger forces that bound the community and the individual. She began to ponder her own relationships, realizing that every connection held power. Just as easily as they could inspire, they could also harm. While reparation for Willow Creek would take time, Clara vowed to be a constant witness and guardian of its unfolding story. The lessons learned from Sarah's tragic end echoed in her mind, serving as a reminder that healing begins with remembrance. And in that vigil, they would not let her memory fade away. Reflection. Months rolled by, each day unfolding as though it were both a continuation and a stark reminder of the darkness that had once draped over Willow Creek. Clara often found herself revisiting Pine Hill Park, where the trees whispered secrets in the wind and sunlight pierced through leaves, hinting at rebirth amid the shadows. It had become a space of solace for her, a testament to resilience. As she sat on a bench beneath the old oak, Clara reflected on how the threads of grief, anger, and love had been intricately woven into the tapestry of the community. The faces of mourners, so familiar in pain, had shifted to expressions of unity and strength. Sarah's memory served as a beacon, urging those around her to create positive change, honoring the life that had been taken too soon. Even Mason's journey, while tragically marked by loss and destructive choices, opened doors for conversation about the importance of mental health and vulnerability. The youth of Willow Creek were starting to engage, advocating for programs and initiatives to bridge the gap between art and emotion so that no one else might feel compelled to take such a dark path. In her quiet moments, Clara understood that healing does not erase the past, but reframes it, allowing love to overshadow despair. As winter melted into spring, she began to channel her energy into writing a personal reflection on those harrowing months, hoping to guide others in finding solace in their stories. Like Sarah, Clara sought to inspire hope through honesty, holding the town's spirit close to her heart, ensuring it flourished in remembrance and light.